So as the title says, this is about how I learned how to do an inhale scream. And for those that are not familiar with that, it's the vocalization of inhaling into your body to create a screaming sound that is generally heard in a death metal song, and sometimes even mainstream rock songs, they'll do it from time to time. And it sounds like this. As a precursor, it sometimes can be considered a aerodactyl type of scream. If you've never heard of that, you'll kind of understand the concept of it, because it sounds like this. So I'm doing two things there. One, I'm doing the inhale scream, and then at the end there, I did a pig squeal. So I'm going to show you how I learned how to do both of these. Alright? So first and foremost, before you do anything vocally, you'll always want to warm up. You know, hum for a little bit, and then of course, hydration. So those are the first two things. New York, New York, New York. Alright. So after a while doing that, you can finally get to it. So what I started out with was I didn't have a tutor, I didn't have anything but YouTube, right? So I kind of winged it. I kind of have learned it on my own, figured it out per se. But I did find one person a long time ago, and I would definitely reference it or show a clip of that person if I could find him again, but I don't know, kind of disappeared in YouTube history because I know it was an old video when I watched it, but anyways, he described it in a way that made sense to me. So, I'm going to try to revision that, So, if you've watched The Grudge, this will make this a lot easier for you. Make the grudge sound. Alright, so that's the external. You're going as you're activating the diaphragm and then forcing that air out, but in a very controlled way. Alright, so that is your premise. That is like your foundation for your control, for your diaphragm, and the general idea of how this is done. So, when you're doing do you notice that it gets louder, bigger, much more volume to it the more I do that? That is another foundation that you'll understand too. Alright? So now you want to do it in reverse. So see how that's done? I inhaled, I exhaled, both making the grudge sound. So, Now I'm going to do it in reverse. I'm going to do an exhale, then inhale. So. And that is how I learned from a foundational perspective. You just suck in. You reverse the flow of air while doing the same thing. You don't change your tightness or anything. That's for later. You just do what you're doing exhale-wise, but you inhale instead. And you want to do it from down here as well. But that's the general idea of how I learned how to do it. Now, of course, once you mastered that, you've pretty much got it for the most part. But then you'll need to understand that you can alterate it a bit. So you can go, you can change your pitch, your tone, and your intensity. Now, to go from to that requires what I was mentioning before, the tightening perspective. You have to tighten your cords, your neck, down here, muscular-wise. And the more that it's tightened, the more intense sounding it sounds. That aerodactyl type of sound that you're going for, that you most likely hear in metal songs. So that's like really tight, and then that's it, basically not tight at all. There's quite a difference there in the intensity. And of course, your airflow matters too. That is what happens. The sound that you just heard, that's a failed inhale because you're inhaling too quickly and tightening too much. So you're like canceling out yourself. So that's why you always got to go in starting slow, right? That was another thing I learned because I kept fucking up because I was doing it too quickly. And I would be like, I kind of heard it, or that I couldn't understand it. So that's why I said I'm revisioning what I learned in a way that every beginner can kind of get the understanding of and grasp of. So you don't want to go from and then you go up higher. And as you can imagine, this will require lots of water. Because it will dry out your cords. And it's good for lubrication for your throat. So, that is the basic premise of how to really get started with an inhale scream. And of course, you'll learn more and better alterations as you perform this technique, by positioning your tongue in certain positions of the mouth, by clenching your jaw in a certain position, or how wide it is, how shut it is. You'll get you'll figure that shit out along the way or upon practicing it more and more by just trying out different things in that kind of way. That's how I did it, once again, because I was only shown, hey, you do this, So, for what I just did there, so you gotta really have your tongue down in there, and in a very oval type of mouth formation. So you'll figure all these idiosyncrasies out, eventually. But that is how you learn the very foundation and basic understanding of the inhale areodactyl scream.